Baylor loses their top 3 scorers and 4 starters, but an influx from the portal and the incoming freshmen will keep Scott Drew's Bears right at the top of the sport.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your college hoops content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch, and I want to remind you that you can get every single episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Welcome in. This episode is brought to you by the Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that's completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Begin your coaching legacy today. Speaking of today, our man Cam Stewart, the host of Locked On Baylor, joins us as we do our Baylor Bears preview show. And man, thinking about Ultimate College Football Head Coach, I'm excited to talk some Scott Drew, and I'm very glad, Cam, that Scott Drew is still in Waco, Texas. Here's where we're going today. We're looking back at last season. We're going to talk storylines for this year, including the sustained success under Coach Drew, trying to replace a ton of production this year. Cam and I are going to make some starting lineup predictions, record predictions, and more. So quick run through, and then I'm going to start peppering Cam with some questions. Last season, Baylor 24-11 overall, 11-7 in the Big 12, tied for third with the Texas Tech Red Raiders. In the Big 12 tournament, beat Cincinnati and then lost to eventual champion Iowa State in the Big 12 semifinals. Grabbed a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, beat Colgate, and ultimately lost to Clemson on that crazy run they went on. Finished the season 15th at KenPom. With this weird offensive-defensive discrepancy, again, we'll get into that later. 17th at Torvik, 15th at Evan Mia, and 15th in the net. Finished 16th in the final AP poll, which is a new thing that happens. But Cam, I want to get into storylines, and here's a trivia question, my friend, that I have for you right out of the gate.
Okay.
In the past 4 NCAA tournaments, how many teams in all of Division I have been a number 3 seed or better all 4 of those tournaments?
Ooh. I'm going to guess no more than 2.
That is true.
There we go. That's
and in actuality, it's no more than 1 because literally it's only the Baylor Bears. Yeah. No other team in the past 4 NCAA tournaments have been a 3 seed or better. In fact, this sustained success under Coach Drew is wild. Baylor is one of just 4 teams to win at least 1 game in each of the last 4 NCAA tournaments. The last 5 seasons, the Bears have a combined 128 wins. That's the most among all Power 5 schools. Baylor's the only school to have a top 19 pick in each of the last 4 NBA drafts. Think about who that leaves out, by the way. And at least 15 wins every season dating back to 06-07. That's 18 straight seasons. And in 15 of those 18 seasons, the Bears have won 20 or more wins, including the last 6 in a row and 12 of the last 13. Cam, I don't expect people to remember most of that I just said, but the reason I just rattle it off like scattershot like that is because this offseason, there was the possibility that Scott Drew would have moved to the Bluegrass State, either to Louisville or Kentucky. He told both of those schools no. How important, given everything that I just read, is it that Coach Scott Drew is still in Waco, Texas?
I think it's the biggest offseason move they made was keeping Scott Drew, because you read off all those numbers, and what's important to remember too is like this was not a sleeping giant necessarily. Nobody saw it as that. Obviously, we know Scott Drew takes over at like the worst possible time. But it's like saying DePaul or Stanford or Rutgers or Penn State in 15 years from now is going to be, have the most wins of anyone in college basketball the 5 seasons, before that. That's what it's like. Baylor was just complete also-rans for decades and decades. And when the rumor came up that Kentucky wanted Scott Drew, and they did want Scott Drew, we were all sweating big time. It was a really nerve-wracking week or so here in Waco. And it's because we see it a lot more with football, I guess, than basketball. But your program can be left in the wilderness when your head coach leaves. All of us were thinking Baylor is a much better program than it used to be. It's a good job in college basketball, which it wasn't for years. And so, we can go and get a head coach, but it's easier said than done. I look across college sports at all these programs that didn't do that. We were saying it here with football with, Matt Rule. Oh, he left for the NFL. Well, we're a good job now. We'll go get the next guy. And we're still wondering if this next guy's good enough. You know what I mean? And so that was the scary part, is all the things we love about Scott Drew off the court. We didn't want that to go. But in terms of, it felt like we were just becoming that second tier of blue blood, and all of a sudden our legendary coach is gone. That changes a lot, but it's great to have him back, and clearly used it as some pretty good leverage in terms of the NIL moves they made afterwards. Baylor's not been shy at funding NIL for their men's basketball program. It's been different for some other sports, but I think Scott used that leverage really well, and is putting together a winner once again.
I will not ever get the image of him on social media sitting at that Mexican restaurant eating chips and salsa camp. Like, what an unbelievable moment of I was just like, Scott Drew is a gangster, man. It was so great. Like, and look, have you eaten there, Cam? I've never been. Is it good?
I have. It's good. It's good. Next time you're in Waco, we'll pop on by.
Okay, dude, let's hit it together. I love it, man. That'd be great. So, like, to put some numbers on what Cam was just saying, folks, Scott Drew's first 3 years were 8, 9, and 4 wins, and then that streak started in year 4. Prior to this sustained run, the last 20-win season was 1987-88, and before that, 1947-48 season. So what Cam says is very true, and I love that analogy you made about, like, that's if, like we were saying today, that DePaul is going to be an absolute juggernaut in a couple years, or it's like, it made me think about, like, getting in on Amazon when it was like $2, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what that's going to be. And so I love you going there. And as you said, we expect this team to be very good again. But before we get to how good they're going to be, last year was the first year in Foster Pavilion, the brand new basketball arena. And Cam, I think the most important question we have to answer this offseason, are we going to get that camera angle fixed ahead of this year?
I have it on good authority that camera angle will be fixed. Can you believe that? You're going to get just as great an experience watching it as you do actually being in the building.
Oh, that's so good. Praise the good Lord above is what I say to that. Now, look, Cam, we're going to talk personnel here in a little bit, but one of the big storylines is clearly the fact that the top 3 scorers from last year's Baylor team are now out the door and gone for various reasons. That's Jacoby Walter, Ray J. Dennis, and Jalen Bridges. Similarly, 4 of the 5 starters are gone. You add to that trio I just said, Yves Misi, and in total, Baylor returns just 1 starter and 3 total, regular rotation contributors. How big a deal is it? All of this Final Four experience that Coach Drew brings in the form of Jeremy Roach and Norchad Omier, along with yet another extremely talented freshman class.
Yeah, I think this is not just a this year issue too, which is good and bad in a few ways, because this is the 3rd time in the last 4 years they've had to replace 4 starters or more. The other year they only had to replace 3, which, as we know, that's a big deal. And I know there's not many programs in college basketball these days with great continuity, even in the last year of the COVID years. I think, we look at a program down the road in Houston that absolutely has that. But there's not many that are able to do that. And so I think what Scott Drew was so ahead of the curve in terms of transfers before there was a portal, and being able to bring in guys. He had an eye for talent, bring them into Baylor and take them to the top of their game. Some cases All-Americans, some cases national champions. And I think there's a way where he's thinking, the last couple of years, we've had a couple one and dones, and I don't want to stop recruiting the best players in high school, but the game is also being won by bringing in guys in the transfer portal. And I might not be able to have guys who will play together for 3 or 4 years, but what I can do are get really guys who have been there before, high basketball IQ guys who have been in the biggest games, and bring those guys in and kind of have that together, that leadership as well as the young guys. And we might not have played together for 3 or 4 years, but we can have some sort of, we can have defined leadership as well as bringing in starter quality guys. So the thing that I love the most about bringing in Omier and Jeremy Roach is they both played in the Final Four. And that's what Baylor needs to be aiming for with the type of talent they're bringing in, year out. I'm not saying that forever, but in where you're at right now and where you've been the last 5 years, that's an aim. Like, that's a goal, the Final Four. Second weekend needs to be a standard, and it hasn't been the last couple of years. And so I love what each of those guys bring individually, but I also really love that they've basically essentially started for 4 years in college basketball. They've both been all conference selections in the case of Norchad Omier in 2 different conferences, and they have both played in the Final Four and played crucial parts of teams that went to the Final Four. You cannot make up that kind of experience.
No, you cannot. And I remember there was a time this offseason when you and I thought that Jonas Adu was going to maybe be a lock for coming to Waco.
Oh, man. We had one or the other, man. It was like one of us is getting Cliff, one's getting Adu, and we'll be fine. And right. Neither of us got him. Yeah.
No, he ends up going to Arkansas. But, man, I tell you, Cam, with all due respect to Jonas Adu, I love this Norchad Omier audition. Well, you know what? We'll take that. Audition. Cam, I want to ask you about the discrepancy between the offense and the defensive efficiency the past couple years. We're running a little bit long on this segment. We probably should thank our sponsors a little bit. So why don't we do that? And then I want to ask about how we can get this defense catching back up to where it was around the time of the national championship, as well as how's Coach Drew going to replace all this departed scoring and starters. We'll get to that conversation in just a second. Hey, Locked On College basketball fans. First, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love. It's called the Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of your favorite team? Stepping into McLean Stadium, man, how rad would that be? From recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. Think you can handle that pressure? And here's what I really love. You're responsible for calling the offensive plays, so your strategy not only determines the success of your season, but it's going to shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. And of course, we got a special offer for the Locked On College basketball family. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost on your program. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up in the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. This episode's also brought to you by our good friends at Game Time. Going to live events, man, is the absolute best, whether it's music, theater, comedy, or finally the fact that college football is back. And I'm looking forward to making all new memories this college sports season. I know Cam is too. Well, great news. When you're getting tickets for this year, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks basically filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time sifting through all the other stuff. So whether it's Game Time ticket coverage, the lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from the seat in the app, Game Time has got you covered. This weekend, these very Baylor Bears we're talking about are hosting Air Force. Time to take down the academy. You hate to do it to America, but that's what we're doing. Look, I found tickets as cheap as $147 on the Baylor sideline, right around the 15-yard line. But there's great other options as well. If you want to go cheaper, $45 in the upper deck, man, it's a great way to do it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. Cam, as I look at Baylor's offensive and defensive efficiency, going back to 5 years ago, as we were talking about earlier, with the sustained success, back in 1920, these are Ken Palm numbers, 17th offense, 4th in defense, 2020-21. Special year in Waco.
Yeah.
Second in offense, 22nd in defense, 21-22. 8th in offense, 13th in defense. But then Cam, the last 2 years, 22-23, second in offense. That's elite, but 107th in defensive efficiency. And then this past year, not quite as bad. And thanks to Kentucky and Bama, who were atrocious defensively, not as many people noticed the Baylor of it all, but 6th offensively and 72nd in defensive efficiency. So Cam, my question to you is, how do we get the Bears back to what was happening around the time of the championship on the defensive end of the floor?
That's a good question, Isaac. And I'm looking for a perfect answer to it. And I've been searching for it for a couple of years, and I'm still looking. And I say that because, last year I thought we saw glimpses of a good defensive team, but obviously you just read the stats. Like it didn't end up being put together. But there were a couple times in the conference where they went hard zone the way Scott Drew used to do before actually the meteoric rise in the last 5 years that they were very good at. And they won some games that way, but overall they just don't have the individual defenders they had in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 22.
Man, those guards were relentless, dude.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it might just be a personnel thing. They didn't. I mentioned they were zoned for years, and because they had guys like Davion Mitchell, they were like, "Well, coach, let us play some man-to-man," and that's what opened it up. And opened up a lot for Baylor on that defensive side. And we've seen almost strictly man-to-man since. And I'm wondering, as I wonder every year, do they have the personnel to play real lockdown man-to-man? The way Houston always seems to have that personnel, right? I think that's the question. And to be honest, just on paper, Isaac, I do like the defensive potential here. I think Jeremy Roach is a good defender.
Yeah.
Wouldn't say, great or earth-shattering or anything. Good. Norchad Omier brings a real amount of grit and rim protection for a guy at 6'9", who's more like 6'11".
Don't be fooled by that undersized, folks. He is strong in the post. Yep.
Yeah, and just brings something, a bit of a grit and a flair that they have not had in the front court for a couple of years here as well. I think you got some versatile defenders off the bench, like a Jalen Celestine and Langston Love, who I think will be coming off the bench. I see a lot of defensive potential in VJ Edgecombe. He is a freshman, so you never know. And a guy who's probably only going to be there 1 year, so we'll see how much he develops, but certainly has the body type and the length to be a good defender. So I'm hoping that it's better than the last 2 seasons. I'm not expecting it to be a 2021 type of defense. And we also got to take into account Scott Drew had to replace a lot of his staff this year as well.
That's right.
A couple of guys going on to different gigs. John Jacobs gets the head coaching job at FAU. Alvin Brooks III becomes the associate head coach at Kentucky. And so there's a lot of movement. Bill Peterson, one of his longtime guys, left as well. So there's a lot of replacement on that bench too. So waiting to see what style they play, but it's certainly the numbers have been they made the leap defensively when going man-to-man, and I'm just wondering if they have the personnel for it.
That's a great question. And I think some of it, and this is going to get into our starting 5 conversation, I think some of it depends on whether it's Norchad Omier starting at the 5 with 4 kind of guards and wings around him, or if Norchad Omier and that's where he played at Miami, or if he starts at the 4 with Josh Ojinawa at the 5, right? And so how interesting a factor do you think that plays in this defensive conversation, Cam?
I think it is intriguing. And from what I've seen and read, obviously, on Norchad, you can put him in a couple different positions. And this is something that will also come up, I'm sure, when talking starting 5, in that this is the closest I think Baylor will come or has come in the last few years to truly positionless basketball. Because we're seeing even in the Big 12 how spread out the game is being played in the half court. So I think Baylor can have some lineups out there where Norchad is your 5 and you're essentially got 4 guards out there. Like that's not just possible, but I think will happen. And so it's the versatility of these guys, positional versatility on both ends of the court, specifically defensively, obviously, to have a bunch of switchable guys that you can roll out basically a 4-guard set plus your small ball center in Norchad Omier. So I think it's really intriguing to see how much of that will be used. They don't have depth at the center position. It's Josh Ojamwina and then no one else above about 6'10". So you've got you've got basically one true center out there. So yeah, I expect a lot of small ball for Baylor this year. I would have loved some more depth at the big man position, but I'm certainly thinking you'll see as fluid a team that Baylor has ever had under Scott Drew in terms of positionally.
And it seems like some of the, as I look and think through the roster, it seems like some of the depth has some size and maybe hope, but I don't know how buried in the depth chart they'll be, and I think that's a factor in it. Let me give a quick run through of personnel things, and then Cam, let's make some starting five predictions. As I said earlier, only 3 returners from the main rotation last year. Jaden Nunn, the lone starter. Langston Love, who, poor guy has just suffered with injuries basically his whole career. Hopefully he'll be fully healthy and ready to go. As you said, Josh Ojanwa. And then a couple other guys that didn't play last year. Giannis Njanga, who was out with an ACL last year, is Joel Embiid's cousin. Oh, by the way. And then Omar Adegbola, who redshirted last year, got a scholarship this offseason. The big additions are what we need to be aware of. There's 3 main portal guys: Norchad Omier, a forward, a center coming over from Miami; Jeremy Roach, the point guard from Duke; and Jalen Celestine, who Cam just mentioned, shooting guard coming over from Cal. Also, Davidson Hubbard transfers in, but up from the D3 level, where he was a D3 All-American at Hampden-Sydney College in Virginia. And then these freshmen, the key 3 names to know are VJ Edgecombe, who is 5th in this class; Rob Wright, who's 23rd in the class. These are per 247, by the way. And Jason Asamoah, who is 72nd at the class. Interestingly, Edgecombe ranked the number 1 small forward. Rob Wright, the number 1 point guard in this class, man. So I'm encouraged by that. And a couple other, like you got Marino Dubravcic, coming in, who signed late June. He's a big with a 7'1" wingspan. So, we'll see there. But then all these losses, obviously, we've talked about multiple of them. We haven't mentioned Caleb Lohner off to Utah to play football.
Yeah.
Miro Little off to Utah as well, and several others as well. So, Cam, all of that said, hit us with your starting lineup expectation.
Okay, I will. I promise I will. So I saw some projections. I think it was Field of 68 had him with a 4-guard set to open and Norchad as the center. Again, I just mentioned that's a lineup I can see. I don't necessarily think it's a starting lineup. I do think you will see Josh Ojanwa in the middle at center with, of course, Norchad Omier as a power forward at 6'8", 6'9", whatever it is. And then you've got a 3-guard set. And I'm sticking Jaden Nunn. I'm keeping him in the starting lineup. Okay. As you know, following college basketball, it's tough. I mean, he started every game last year. You don't just pull that guy out of the lineup because you got some stars. And then Jeremy Roach is your point guard.
Yeah.
He kind of dipped away from that position last year at Duke. He is your point guard. And VJ Edgecombe is the other one that rounds out the starting lineup. I think you get a lot of Rob Wright at running the point as well with Jeremy Roach swinging to the 2 in some rotations. And I think they love having Langston Love off the bench. No pun intended there. That was the guy that Field of 68 had in there as the 4th guard. He's a physical guy, so he can, he can get down low in those small ball lineups, but I don't know if he's a guy in your starting lineup who you're rolling out at small forward, so to speak. But they love the production he gives them off the bench. And any coach loves that. A microwave guy you can put out there, and he's going to give you double figures, which is exactly what he was doing last year before the injuries. He had a couple in the conference season. That's the big thing, is whether he can stay healthy. But, yeah, that 5, again, because I just mentioned so many names, is going to be Roach, Nunn, Edgecombe, Omier, Ojanwa.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, Cam, you say all that, because yes, a lot of people are predicting, as you look around at people's starting projections, Ojanwa the bench with Love in that starting lineup. And there's just the question of the health. Like, will he even be fully ready to go? That's just tough to say. I think some of that is a factor, but I think given the unpredictability of that, I'd have to go with the exact same starting 5 as you did. Plus, as you said, the luxury of bringing a Langston Love off the bench in a day and age where we are saying get old and stay old, man, that's a massive deal. To combine that with younger guys like a Rob Wright and Jason Asamoah, but also having Jalen Celestine able to come off the bench as a transfer in from the ACC from Cal.
Yes, so, ACC guy. Think about that second team. Your number 1 high school point guard recruit in the country. You come in with a Langston Love, who averaged double figures last year, was going to be the sixth man of the year in the conference till he got hurt. Jalen Celestine, who goes under the radar, but he's a guy who shot 43% from three in his limited attempts at Cal. They really like what he can bring to them as a shooter, and a real athletic future NBA wing in Jason Asamoah too. Like that is a really good second four or second five that you can bring off the bench. And it might be the best in the Big 12.
And look, this is not Kansas where Bill Self basically refuses to play his bench. Scott Drew will play his bench. And so I expect to see that we see a lot of that depth, maybe going 9 and 10 deep, depending on where things stand and how some of the freshmen come along. Look, we still got to talk a little bit about schedule. Cam and I got to make some predictions for record and where this team will end up in the NCAA tournament. We'll do all that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Look, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel this summer, America's #1 sports book. And usually, we've been filling you in on a boost or a bonus that you can get every day from FanDuel. Right now, we got something a little bit different for you. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. We talked about Baylor Air Force earlier. Let me give you the line for that game. The Bears favored by 15.5, and that over-under is set at an interestingly low 41.5 points. So if you want to get in on that action or anything else going on this weekend, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. We're going to wrap the show today talking Baylor's schedule and then just making some predictions for, record and where they'll finish in the Big 12, all of that stuff. Big 12, along with all the power conferences other than the SEC, is moving to 20 games this year. SEC is the lone holdout, sticking to 18. So that means you get 31 regular season games. There will be 11 non-con games. As of right now, we are aware of 10 of them. So there's one game that's missing that I'm predicting will be somewhere in December for the Bears. But the big ticket games we know about are Wednesday, November 6th against Gonzaga, location TBD, unless, Cam, you got some intel that I don't know about.
I wish.
The rumors that we have are that it'll either be in Mexico or Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that. The Baja Mar down in the Bahamas, which I hadn't even thought about that. VJ Edgecombe heading home, baby. That's pretty fun. Game 1 on Thursday, November 21st against St. John's. The next day, Friday, the 22nd, against either Virginia or Tennessee. That should be several great games down there. The Big 12 Big East battle, Wednesday, December 4th at reigning champion UConn. That will be a great game there. That's the last 3 of the last 4 national championships.
Yeah, right.
That's incredible. A TBD game against Michigan State, expected to be in Houston. We don't have the date for that, again, unless you have intel that I don't, Cam, on that. And then the rest are basically bye games at home. And again, we're waiting on one other non-con game. In terms of, go ahead, Cam. You got.
I was going to say, because they did add one very recently, last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, November 9th. That'll be at the American Airlines Center in Dallas against John Calipari's Hogs.
There it is. That's the one we were missing. That's number 11, and that's the exciting game. Good to know it. Okay. And then in conference play, the 5 home-only games are UCF, Kansas, K-State, OK State, and West Virginia. Away only is Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. And then the home and away, Arizona, Cincy, Houston, TCU, and Utah. Really like this non-con schedule, Cam. I think it's a good mix of high major competition to challenge what should be a strong Baylor team and some bye games to help get this pretty new rotation coming together. What do you like about this schedule as you look at it?
Honestly, what I like the most is the conference schedule, but I do love, which is wild from the Big 12. But I love, again, how Scott Drew is just not afraid to schedule.
Yes.
I mean, you could say that about a couple of top end coaches, Drew, Mark Few, Danny
Bill
Hurley, Bill Self. Absolutely. All those guys, they're not afraid to do this. Okay, sure. Anytime, anywhere. Let's go. Personally, being a New England guy, and Connecticut is close enough to New England, but I'm not going to consider it that. I love that they go up there to Stores and play the 2-time defending champs. I think that's going to be an awesome one. And I love that we added this Arkansas one here for Baylor football's bye week. So no Saturdays off for yours truly, but,
yes.
But that's going to be a ton of fun, in an environment that's got a lot of alums from both schools in Dallas. And we get to see what this new look Arkansas team looks like. So I love that. I always love playing Gonzaga. Always a reason to bust out the highlights from 2021. So that's great. But in terms of this conference schedule, Isaac, I think it shook out about as well as you can ask for in the Big 12. Kansas once, and it's at home. You have like one pretty bad road only game, and that's
at
Tech.
Iowa State.
Iowa State. You're right. No, you're right.
Legit,
you're right.
dude.
Iowa State too. You're right. I was thinking that was a home and away, but you're right. That's only road. So, I mean, those are going to come, right? Those are going to come with playing in the Big 12.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, Colorado's down, Arizona State's down. We don't know on BYU yet, but I'm good with that away only schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to go to KU. You don't have to go to Kansas State, where they've slipped up the last few years. You get a home and away with Houston. So Houston on the road is tough. They don't lose there. Played a dandy of a game at the Foster last year. So getting them twice, and some of the other teams twice are teams they should beat both home and away. I'm looking at TCU and I'm looking at Utah. Yep. Like those games you should win both home and away. So right. I see a path where Baylor could be the best team in the Big 12 because of that schedule. And because they're good.
And because they're good, which they should be, assuming all the pieces come together, which I think we both will. So Cam, let's move immediately then to say, what is your projected finish for this team in the Big 12 standings? And give me your record prediction in those 31 regular season games.
I think they will go 26-5.
Okay.
And they will win the Big 12.
Ooh, baby. I like it. Give me that spice. Right now, I hope I'm low because I'm a big Baylor fan. I've got family that lives pretty close to Waco.
All right.
I've got the Bears 4th in the Big 12. I apologize. Behind Kansas, behind Iowa State, and behind Houston. And because of that, I've got it a little bit lower than Cam's prediction. I have the Bears 22-9 in the regular season, 9-2 in non-con, and 13-7 in the Big 12, which last year was good enough to be tied for third, basically.
Yeah.
And so in that same market. But look, because of the Big 12, because of how good that non-con schedule is, Cam, let me just take it immediately. I think that's good enough to still get a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. And which, by the way, would be the 5th straight year of such a high level seed. And that to me is beyond bonkers. As you said, I think second weekend is the baseline expectation just about every year for this team and this year included. So I think Sweet 16, but probably Elite 8, I think for me is what I'm expecting this team to do. Where are you at on the NCAA tournament side of things?
Well, I kind of agree with the first part there in that they have to get past the first weekend. Like there's no excuse anymore. This is 3 straight years they've gone out the second round. And each of those 3 teams was more talented than the second round, unequivocally. Yeah. And so there's no more excuses to not get past that. I think this is a team that could play in the Final Four. I really do. I'm high on this team, as you can tell, because I do think that top 4 in the Big 12 is a murderer's row. Like that's an insanely, I mean, you could make an argument for each of those teams to be in the top 5. So I think this has the potential to be a Final Four team. And I think, which kind of leaves you without much room, right? You have to be in at least the Sweet 16, and I think you can make the Final Four.
Yeah. And given what you said about the record and the expectations, I think like that goes in line with what you're talking about. So as Cam said, 3 straight second round exits for Baylor. It would be North Carolina, Creighton, and Clemson the last 3 years. And so got to get past that. Got to make it back to that second round. That's what we're looking for. Cam Stewart, thank you so much, folks. Make sure you go check out Locked On Baylor for all of Cam's great coverage, both of Baylor football and basketball as things roll along. Man, we are less than 8 weeks away to the tip of college basketball season. It's going to be phenomenal. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to the show, please go make sure you do that on video and audio, both Locked On Baylor and Locked On College Basketball. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we'd love to have you come be with us. The link for that's in the show notes. notes, and it's 100% free to join. As always, I want to say apologies to the lawyer family. Let's go Wildcats, and until tomorrow, peace.